All right, buckle up, political junkies. We're diving headfirst into a whirlwind recap of what's being dubbed Trump's second term disaster. The New York Times called it one relentless year. And from the sound of this clip, things have been anything but calm. We're going to dissect some of the most eye-popping claims, the biggest political jabs, and try to make sense of the chaos that's been unfolding. Get ready to challenge your own assumptions, because when it comes to politics, the truth is often stranger and funnier than fiction. Let's roll.
How has the year been? Well, the New York Times, thinking back on what we've just been through, calls it one relentless year, clearly a reference to the first year under the second term of President Trump, as well as some of the other things we've all gone through. To close it out, here is what a big Trump critic had to say as a kind of holiday message.
From a fascism perspective, this has been a really great year. Tyranny is booming over here. My country's president would like to shut me up because I don't adore him in the way he likes to be adored. Millions and millions of people stood up and said, no, this is not acceptable. He did this all to support the right to a free expression of speech. We won, the president lost, and now I'm back on the air every night, giving the most powerful politician on earth a right and richly deserved bollocking.
A little bit of fun there, but of course the jokes and the punchlines reference the truth. Kimmel getting that last laugh over Trump for now. But it is worthwhile to look at how he won and how Donald Trump's effort at a censorship plot has been going across the year. He spent a lot of 2025 with his view of opponents and criticism as something that should be punished, illegal, or outright attacked. The lawsuits, the intimidation. Some have capitulated, including multi-million-dollar settlements, even in cases where their own lawyers told them they would win if they only fought.
Whoa, censorship plot? That's a pretty strong accusation, isn't it? It frames any pushback or legal challenge as an attempt to silence rather than, say, a response to perceived defamation or a legal dispute. It's like calling every traffic ticket a plot to prevent you from driving. Sure, it impacts your ability to drive, but it's within a legal framework, not necessarily a grand conspiracy to shut down your car. The speaker here talks about multi-million-dollar settlements and capitulation even when lawyers said they would win. This is where it gets interesting. In the real world, lawsuits, especially against high-profile figures, are incredibly expensive and time-consuming. Even if you're confident you'll win, the sheer cost and distraction can be enough to make a settlement look appealing. It's less about a censorship plot and more about the brutal economics of litigation. Think of it like a game of chicken. One side might have the legal high ground, but if the other side has deeper pockets and a willingness to drag things out, the winner might still lose a lot of time, money, and mental energy. So while the idea of a censorship plot is certainly dramatic, the reality might be a bit more mundane. The high cost of doing business when you're in the crosshairs of someone with immense resources and a penchant for legal battles. It's not always about stifling speech, but sometimes about exhausting the speaker. A subtle but crucial difference, wouldn't you say?
Colbert saw his show canceled. The parent company says it was purely financial. But when you take it all together, you can see how capitulation works. Trump is also underwater and facing a larger revolt as he ends the year, including on issues that were thought to have helped him win the election last year. That includes a deportation agenda that, now that we've seen it for a year, is very unpopular, drawing opposition from across the political spectrum. NPR reporting on separated families, a Texas Tribune discussing the negative impact on the criminal probes, the Economic Policy Institute discussing other areas where Trump's running into problems, like the deportation plans also have the other effect of hurting the economy and jobs in the U.S. Tariffs are not a success either. We've had months now to take them in, although Trump has zigzagged, but the chart and the data shows that the tariffs have continued on and off with some, some sort of pullbacks at times, but overall you see the rates went up didn't go down much. Trump knows there's an economic problem. He talks about it, but also seems to be in denial.
There's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. The word affordability. I inherited a mess. I inherited a total mess. It's a con job. I think affordability is the greatest con job.
Okay, hold on a second. Calling affordability a con job by Democrats. That's a take hotter than a ghost pepper. It's like saying gravity is a con job by scientists to make us all feel heavy. Affordability, or the lack thereof, is a lived experience for millions of Americans. It's about how much gas costs, how much your groceries are, whether you can afford rent, or if you can actually save for a down payment on a house. These aren't abstract concepts, they're tangible burdens. To dismiss it as a con job is to essentially tell everyone struggling with their bills that their problems aren't real or that they're just falling for a political trick. That's a tough sell when people are looking at their bank accounts and seeing less and less wiggle room. While political parties certainly frame issues in ways that benefit them, the underlying economic pressures are very much real, regardless of who's talking about them. It reminds me of that classic scene where someone says, "What? Me worry?" while their house is on fire. You can deny the fire all you want, but the smoke detector is still blaring and the house is still burning. Ignoring an issue doesn't make it go away. It just means you're not addressing it. And when it comes to something as fundamental as people's ability to afford their lives, pretending it's a con job might just be the biggest political miscalculation of all.
They look at you and they say, affordability. They don't say anything else. Everyone says, oh, the word affordability is a con job by the Democrats.
That is how the president ended the year, those kind of claims in December. But that hasn't been well received, and it's up against a wider revolt. The economy doesn't help his position politically. The Epstein debacle has stretched well into Christmas. We can get to that. But the wider revolt across the year has been peaceful protests that show the Trump resistance is strong. Unlike some of those elites running some of those companies, these people aren't giving up. Millions at the No Kings events. The ongoing release of the Epstein files has not stemmed the tide because it has been bungled. The redactions drawing ridicule, the minority of documents released are basically the DOJ admitting that they're breaking the law. Axios reports files will release well through the end of next week, and the Trump administration will lose that PR war day after day. Now there are reports of hundreds of thousands more files that they still need to review. It doesn't exactly look like a competent cover-up, although mathematically it is still a cover-up. That is where they end the year and where we begin with our guest tonight, Che Komanduri, a veteran of 3 presidential campaigns, and Margaret Carlson from Semaphore. Che, we can kind of kick back for a moment here, take it all in. How do you see the year?
Well, I think in Hollywood terms, the sequel has flopped. There is no question that the first Trump term was a disappointment. This has proven to be far, far worse for the American people. I think that Trump has done something that's very rare. He's such a divisive figure, but he's managed to unify the country in disapproval, not just of him, but specifically of his economy. Trump's economic numbers are significantly lower than his overall approval. And it seems to me that his overall approval is quickly catching up with his dismal economic numbers. I do think on the more hopeful note, however, you know, if America's Ebenezer Scrooge and Trump is the ghost of Christmas present, we don't know what the ghost of Christmas future is going to be. And it could be any number of people. It could my hope is it's something that's going to be better for all of us as Americans.
Wow, Margaret, Che came to play today. A lot of Christmas analogies that I'm obviously not fit to work with, but interesting. I wonder, Margaret, we've spent time with you in the last few weeks on Epstein and some of the topics of the week. But when you look at the whole year, same question to you.
Hello, Shay. What a downer you are this time. I was trying to think of one cheerful thing that happened as I was reading the papers today, end of the year, where are we going, 10 best, 10 worst. The only thing I could think of in the realm of public realm was Pope Leo the 14th being chosen without any charges of fraud or voter intimidation. And so far, so good. He doesn't have a family that's committing fraud and becoming enriched. He doesn't have wars that are going on that aren't declared, where from the looks of it, poor survivors are being murdered, and there doesn't seem to be a controlling legal authority. That's one of the things that's missing now that Trump has assumed so much power. If you live in Washington and you go past the White House, half of which has been demolished, it is such a vivid representation. I can't modify my garage in less than a year in Washington, D.C. And you see this and you think, oh, these bombs have been falling here, not just in Ukraine. So that's a disorganized, but it's sort of a, mass shootings, mass deportations. Where do you go for good government? I don't know where you go. And by the way, the Ukraine talks are not going to lift our spirits, because Trump seems to think that Putin and Zelensky are equally to blame for the bloodshed. And he so wants a Nobel Peace Prize that he's not going to listen to anything else.
Well, how about that point, Jay? We end the year with real questions about the competence and cleanliness of government, partly by design, the team that Trump picked.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's very clear to me is that America will not go the way of Hungary. There will be no Orbanization of the United States. And it's not because Russell Vogt and the people around him haven't tried. It's because they are led by an 80-year-old man baby and these incompetent wannabe podcasters he's surrounded himself with. They simply do not have the competence to pull it off.
All right, 80-year-old man baby and incompetent wannabe podcasters. Quite the character assessment there. While it's certainly a colorful way to describe a political team, it does raise an interesting point about competence in government. Whether you agree with the man baby part or not, the underlying question of whether an administration has the ability to execute its agenda, good or bad, is critical. It's a bit like assembling a dream team for a major project. You can have the grandest vision in the world, but if your team members are constantly tripping over their own feet, or if the project manager is more focused on Twitter feuds than blueprints, that vision is going to remain just that, a vision. The speaker suggests that the worst designs might not be realized simply due to a lack of execution rather than a lack of intent. This highlights a fascinating paradox. Sometimes incompetence can accidentally be check on power. It's like trying to build a supervillain's lair, but the contractor keeps ordering the wrong kind of steel and the laser beams keep shorting out. The threat is there, the desire is there, but the capacity to actually pull it off is missing. It's a backhanded compliment, I suppose, to the resilience of American institutions that even a highly motivated but perhaps disorganized effort might ultimately fall short. So maybe it's less about the man baby and more about the can't quite get the Legos to snap together factor.
Now, the question of whether America becomes Argentina, an economic basket case because of some of these policies, I think that's still very much an open question. But I do think that in a more hopeful way, I think that their worst designs are simply not going to be realized. America's too large, too diverse, and too democratic for it to occur.
Well, it's an interesting point to end the year on, Jay. And Margaret, we've gone through it this year. There were moments, say, day 4 of Doge, where people thought, oh, my God, can you really get away with this? And the answer, relatively quickly, I'm not minimizing some of the damage, but by the scale of the federal government, the answer relatively quickly, Margaret, was no. They ultimately did not get away with it. There were limits on how long Musk could be what he was, which was a fake wannabe cabinet member who didn't divest and do the things under the law that real cabinet members do. There were actually limits on how long he could be there. Then the reporters got involved and pointed out how little money they actually saved. And the public said no. I picked that as one example. Censorship, I'll put up the headline since we had the Kimmel of it. Trump says Colbert should be put to sleep, quite a terminology there, when he was upset about coverage. And the disapproval of him should cost their broadcast licenses. Of course, that's kind of an old school reference to something that didn't work in the first year, although they tried, Margaret. The effort to threaten media with licenses did not actually end Kimmel.
Well, a lot of the threats have ended in corporations and universities forking over large sums of money for no reason except to be relieved of the threat of this madman who's coming after them. Now, if you read Jonathan Karl, ABC Jonathan Karl wrote a book called Retribution, and it's one of the better books coming out of this go at Trump. He is a baby throwing a tantrum, only with immense power. You know, the baby has no power, but he's kicking and screaming and getting his way. There's no Supreme Court that seems to be coming in. Where are the parents?
Whoa, baby throwing a tantrum only with immense power. And where are the parents? That's a pretty evocative image, isn't it? It suggests a system where traditional checks and balances, the parents in this analogy, aren't effectively reining in executive power. The idea that there's no Supreme Court that seems to be coming in is a strong indictment, implying a failure of the judiciary to act as a counterweight. This analogy really hits on a core concern in any democracy: accountability. When a leader acts with what's perceived as unchecked power, whether it's through executive orders, legal challenges, or simply ignoring norms, people start to wonder who, if anyone, is going to step in. It's like watching a kid run wild in a supermarket, knocking over displays, and everyone's looking around asking, whose kid is that? The challenge, of course, is that the parents in a democracy aren't always a single clear entity. They're a complex web of institutions: the judiciary, Congress, the press, and ultimately the voters themselves. When any of these parents are seen as failing or are perceived as being compromised, the whole system feels out of whack. It's not just about one person's behavior, but about the health and resilience of the democratic guardrails. And when those guardrails feel wobbly, it makes everyone a little nervous, regardless of their political stripe.
There are no parents, and I don't think the press, and I don't include Che now, or I'm just saying the press writ large and me, know how to deal with somebody who lies so much. You can't take issue with all of it. And it seems that, some people believe it, some people don't, but you cannot, in Retribution, Jonathan Karl shows how he almost always gets his way. He gets back at people. He has an enemies list that's far longer than Richard Nixon or anything Richard Nixon was able to carry out. And while we had the no kings, and I agree with Che, we'll get out of it, but we're not going to get out of it without a lot more pain. And I think the Ukraine pain is going to come very soon with this next meeting. Where nothing comes out of it,
Che,
but more fighting.
And that's a wrap on our dive into a truly wild year in politics. From claims of censorship plots to debates over economic con jobs and the competence of political teams, it's clear that the political landscape remains as tumultuous as ever. What's undeniable is the passion, the frustration, and the sheer unpredictability that continues to define our public discourse. What do you think? Were these arguments valid or just more political theater? Did the parents step in, or are we still waiting for accountability? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you want more breakdowns like this, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.